like a giraffe, they have a long prehensile tongue that they use to eat leaves off of trees. Now coming up ahead here on the right-hand side at the top of the hill here, we're going to be passing by some greater kudus, one of the taller antelope species on the reserve, standing at about 5 feet tall at the shoulder. They also have some pretty large ears, helps them to listen out for predators in the area, and if they notice any predators, they'll make a noise that sounds like a dog barking, lets the other greater kudu know to keep an eye out for them. Now up at the top of the hill on the left-hand side there, you can kind of see the black rhinoceros up there. Now the black rhino is actually one of the smaller rhino species in the world, so they only get to be about 2,000 to 3,000 pounds, and that might not sound too small, but when we're talking about animals that can get up to 5,000 pounds, that is pretty small in comparison. Now coming up ahead on the right-hand side, there's another antelope species, a little more shy and elusive antelope, the bongo. The bongos, they actually have the nickname the ghosts of the forest. And not only do their long horns help to protect them from predators, but they also use their horns to dig up roots that they might snack on. Now the bongos, if they want to get around out here in the forest, they will run around with their chins tilted upwards. That way they can have their horns lie flat against their back so they can move around out here without their horns getting stuck in the trees and bushes as easy. Now with that, we're going to make our way out of the Little Ituri Forest, heading over to the Safi River. And the Safi River is going to be home to some more aquatic animals, and some of these animals are going to be nocturnal as well, so we'll just have to keep an eye out for them, see what we can find out here today. At the very least, we'll keep an eye out for signs of those more nocturnal animals, but it's still pretty early in the morning, so we should still be able to see some out here. Like on that right-hand side, just past the bush there, you might be able to see the Nile hippopotamus in the water. A little hard to see. We'll see if we can find any that are a little easier to see around here. A little further, you'll see those big white birds on the right-hand side, the pink-backed pelicans. They might not look pink right now, but they'll get their pink color mostly during mating season when their backs will blush. That's when their feathers start to molt, and that pink color becomes a lot more prominent. And there on that left-hand side, a little better look at the Nile hippopotamus there in the water. Now the hippos have some pretty sensitive skin. They can sunburn, so they usually spend their days like we see there, submerged underwater, really only coming up to graze mostly at night. Now that does make them mostly nocturnal animals, and on a cloudy day like today should be a good way for these animals to get a little more time out of the water than they usually would get. Now, since they are mostly nocturnal animals, they can actually hold their breath for up to 8 minutes at a time. Every 8 minutes, they'll float up to the surface of the water, take a breath of air, and sink back down to the bottom. Even if they're asleep, it's an instinct that they have. Now, as we journey a little further, we'll see what other animals we can find here on the Safi River. Looks like up ahead on the left-hand side, you can see the Nile crocodile over on the banks there. It's one of the largest crocodilian species in all of Africa. Those crocodiles can get anywhere from 16 to 18 feet long on average. Can weigh anywhere from 300 to 500 pounds. They also have one of the strongest bite forces out of any animals in the animal kingdom, but despite that, they can also be very gentle parents. Both the mothers and fathers will hold their eggs inside of their mouths. They're going to rock those eggs back and forth. That actually helps them hatch. Now with that, we're going to make our way out of the Safi River. We're going to head on over towards the savannah. The weather on the savannah is a little different than other areas in Africa. Most of the year out here, it's actually going to be a very dry season. It's when watering holes that these animals rely on start to dry up due to a lack of rainfall. Usually ends up lasting about 9 months out of the year, and that's followed up by 3 months of heavy rain during a monsoon season. So a lot of the animals out here really have to make the most out of whatever water they can get a hold of. Now coming up ahead on the right-hand side around this corner, we're going to be passing by this giant baobab tree there. Also has the nickname the upside down tree. Looks like it's been flipped upside down with its roots in the air, but those trees are very important for the animals here on the savannah. So they can hold up to 30,000 gallons of water inside of their spongy roots and trunks, making for an incredible source of water during the dry seasons of the year. When those watering holes dry up, the animals will journey over to find those trees to poke holes in their trunks and get some of that water out. It's because of the life-saving water that the trees have one more nickname. You might have heard this one before. They were sometimes called the Tree of Life. Now at the bottom of this hill here, it looks like there's quite a few animals out here today. Some giraffes out and about. But first, over on the right-hand side, you can see the Ankole cattle with their long horns on their heads. The cows off on that right-hand side. Their horns are mostly hollow on the inside, helps with air circulation, keeps them nice and cool on a hot day, kind of like having a built-in air conditioner strapped to their heads. And on that right-hand side as well are the natural storm chasers out here on the savanna, the wildebeests. Now those wildebeests during the 3 months of rainy season, they'll group together and follow those storms all throughout Africa, traveling all around, picking up more and more wildebeests as they travel until they eventually can reach numbers as large as 1.5 million. Those migratory herds can actually stretch anywhere from 500 to 1,000 miles long. And in years past, they were traveling in such big numbers that they created such massive dust storms that it was able to be seen all the way from outer space. Now, as we make our way further here, you're going to notice a lot of these animals are herbivores out here. That's because the herbivores, the plants, they really soak up the water from the 3 months of rainy season. Not only does that make for a pretty healthy snack for these animals, but it's also a great way for these animals to stay hydrated. They're mainly going to be broken up into 3 main categories of herbivores. We're going to be finding the grazing animals like those wildebeests and the antelopes up ahead here that eat off the grass. There's browsing animals like the giraffes that looks like they're heading over towards the other side of the savanna, so we'll see where they're going. But the browsing animals eat off the top of the leaves, and then there's one more group of animal that we'll see if we can talk about here later, if we can find them. But first, on the left-hand side here are the elands, one of the largest antelope species in the world. An adult male eland can actually get to be about 6 to 8 feet tall at the shoulder. They can actually weigh up to 2,000 pounds, but despite weighing a literal ton, they can leap up to 8 feet into the air from a standing position. At the top of the hill on the left-hand side as well, looks like there's a couple of sable antelopes. They have their long horns tilted backwards to protect themselves from predators pouncing on their backs. Where a lot of other animals will run away from predators, those sable antelopes, they'll stand their ground and protect their area. Very territorial, very protective and brave animals. And they are led by the dominant male of the herd, but it's not actually the dominant female that decides where the herd will travel. Way off in the distance on the right-hand side, you can kind of see another small species of antelope up at the top of that hill there. We'll see if we can get a little better look there. But those are springboks. They only get to be about 3, maybe 3.5 feet tall, but they're very fast. They can run up to 55 miles an hour, can leap up to 13 feet long and up to 6 feet high. It's because of their amazing athletic abilities that they're the mascots of a lot of sports teams around the world. Around this curve, a better look at some more wildebeest up ahead here. Now the name wildebeest comes from the Afrikaans words for wild beast, and they have another name in Swahili. That name is spelled G-N-U, pronounced new. They get that name from the noise that they make. And coming up ahead on the left-hand side around this corner, looks like here's where the giraffes have made their way off to. And it looks like we'll be getting a pretty good look at them here. Now take a look at their spots. You'll notice that their spots get a little jagged or pointing around the edges, almost like puzzle pieces. That's how we can tell that it is a Maasai giraffe. And hopefully this close up, you can also see just how tall they can get. We're talking anywhere from 18 to 20 feet tall on average. Looks like they're hanging out over by those trees there. Those are the browsing animals, browsing from the tops of the trees, getting that breakfast up there. It's usually how they spend most of their day, though, just going around from treetop to treetop trying to find something to eat. Does not give them a lot of room in the day for sleep, though, so it's a good thing. They only really need about 30 minutes of sleep a day. Usually broken up their naps that they take standing up, and sometimes those naps can be as short as 30 seconds apiece. Now coming up ahead, it looks like we're going to be passing by a couple of those baobab trees up at the very top of this hill here. But it looks like some of the trees and rocks have been knocked over a little bit coming up ahead, especially in this next area here. That's a sign of the last herbivore group, the bulldozing animals. Animals that will knock over trees to get those leaves that way. We'll keep an eye out for them, but typically bulldozing animals, they tend to be a little more active a little later in the day though, so might not be out and about around this time of day. Over on that right-hand side, you can see the springbok a little easier there. Then I believe around this corner, we should be able to pass by some pink or some greater flamingos here soon. See, the greater flamingos, they really like to stay in one spot most of their lives. If they can find a good clean source of water, they really won't ever leave that spot unless they absolutely have to. Also, you can see that this area out here also makes for a good sanctuary for some other animals like ducks around here. Not only is it a great place for these animals, but also for the natural animals, the natural wildlife around the area.
That's funny.
Now, these are greater flamingos. They are the largest and lightest pink of any flamingo species. You can see a couple of baby flamingos there on that island. You'll notice that they hatch gray, then they get their pink color later based off their diet, consisting mostly of brine shrimp. They get their pink color about a year down the line. Now the flamingos, their long legs help them to protect themselves from any animals that might be lurking in the water. So sometimes you might see them stand on one leg. That's because they need to keep themselves out of the water for as long as possible. So they'll switch off from one leg to another. Whenever one leg gets tired, they'll switch off to the other one, let the other one rest. Now we're gonna make our way over towards the other side of the savannah, see what else we can find around here. Looks like this first area on the left-hand side is a mud wallow. You can see the mud over there. When it gets a little hotter, animals like warthogs and rhinos will come out here and roll around in the mud. Helps to keep them nice and cool while also acting as a natural sunscreen and bug repellent. Although on a day like today where it's been a little rainier, might not see a lot of animals hanging out around here. But that might just mean that they're a little further along our journey, so we'll just keep an eye out as we continue through here. Coming up around this corner, might be able to see one of our animal programs team. They're the people who take care of these amazing animals. Looks like they're getting that area nice and ready for some of the animals that might be over here. And up ahead, looks like we're going to be passing by a couple of cheetahs, or at least one cheetah over on that left-hand side. Now the cheetahs, they are very fast, of course. They are the fastest land animals on Earth, can go from 0 to 60 miles in about 3 seconds, reaching top speeds of about 70 miles an hour. They do not have the ability to retract their claws, at least not all the way. It's because they use their sharp claws to dig into the ground, helps them to run at those high speeds. A couple of cheetahs, actually. Kind of like a built-in pair of athletic cleats. Now, they do not have the ability to roar. Instead, they make a chirping noise, sounds almost like a bird, and they're the largest cats that can purr, something that other big cats like lions and tigers cannot do. Over on the left-hand side, at the very front of the truck, hiding behind the bushes there, you might be able to see the white rhinoceros, the larger cousin of the black rhinoceros. Now, those white rhinos can get to be anywhere from 4,000 to 5,000 pounds, and even though we can see them, they might not be able to see us from this far away. At least not all that well, might just be a big blurry blob. It's because rhinos are nearsighted. They have pretty bad eyesight, but they make up for their poor eyesight with incredible hearing. They can actually hear for about a mile away. They just got to be a little more careful than some other animals, but as we saw there, they're just very gentle giants. In fact, they don't have any natural predators, and not a lot of animals really want to mess with them. So they can feel free to spend their days just minding their own business. Now these rocks on the left-hand side are copies, that's what we call them. And they help animals like lions get a good look out on the horizon before they start their hunts. Although the lions, they usually spend anywhere from 15 to about 20 hours a day resting and sleeping, saving their energy for the nighttime. So they might not be out and about around this time of day. They might have just gotten in for bed, but we'll keep an eye out here. Sometimes in the mornings they might be a little more active. Now, even if we don't see any lions, just keep an ear out a little bit later in the morning. If they do become a little more active and they start roaring, their roars can be heard from up to about 5 miles away out on the open savannah, so just keep an ear out. Coming up around this corner, we're going to be passing by some burrows, and it looks like the burrows are home to some warthogs here today. Now the warthogs, they'll dig their own burrows using their snouts and razor-sharp front tusks like a shovel, or sometimes they'll find burrows that were abandoned by other burrowing animals like aardvarks and go into those burrows and renovate them, make them into their own. Now those warthogs are very adaptable animals, very hard-working animals. If they feel comfy, they'll just take a nap out in the open wherever, but if they feel threatened, they might back their way, shimmy their way backwards into their burrows, so that way they can have their tusks facing outwards, so they can protect their homes at a moment's notice. They also prefer to be more active during the day, but if they notice that there's humans in the area, they might adapt to be a little more nocturnal, so they can avoid any unnecessary human interaction. Now with that, we're going to make our way a little further, heading out of the reserve towards the Magadi Glen. see what we can find around here. Usually this means that we are approaching the end of our safari, but it looks like there's one more animal we're going to be passing by, the Nigerian dwarf goats. These goats, they're very playful, very social animals. In fact, they learn from each other by playing games with each other. And they will have headbutt competitions to see who's going to be the leader of their group. See one at the top of the hill there, and then there's one right underneath the roof there on that left-hand side. They might look pretty small, but that's about as big as they're going to get. Makes them pretty good animals for domestication, though. Means it takes less space to take care of those goats, so the warden can get some more space to some other animals on the reserve that might need it a little more. Now, if you want to get a better look at animals like those Nigerian dwarf goats or some other barnyard friends, I'd recommend checking out Rafiki's Planet Watch. To get there, you're going to have to take the Wildlife Express. The first train of the day is going to be leaving at 9:30, so you have a little bit of time to go check it out. But over at Rafiki's Planet Watch, you'll find the affection section where you can pet those barnyard animals, like those Nigerian dwarf goats. You'll also find the conservation station. You can find the Animal Nutrition Center, Animal Hospital, where sometimes they'll have animal procedures or checkups being done in the mornings, so you can always check out what's going on over there. They have inside animal exhibits like reptiles, amphibians, and invertebrates. And they also have the Art of Animation experience. You can learn to draw some of your favorite Disney animated characters. Now with that, it looks like we're just about at the end of our safari here today. If there were any wilderness explorers on board, you are on board the Simba 1. That's Simba like the lion, 1 like the number. Going to be your code for that wilderness explorer badge. Now would also be a great time to make sure you have any and all personal belongings. Got a little bumpy at times, so just make sure nothing fell out of any pockets before you